What is up, team? Welcome back to the Red Storm Rapid Reaction Podcast. I'm Pat Kane. That's Cole Shaw, and St. John's just had a not-so-happy Thanksgiving. They go out to Vegas, leave 1-2. Cole and brother Sean were both out there to witness the travesty. We're going to break it all down for you guys. Cole, how are you feeling now? You're back on the home ground of Philadelphia, or Pennsylvania, I should say. And then what are your thoughts?
It was not a happy flight home. I think me and Sean were bad luck out there. Just everything we had talked about before the Vegas Players Era tournament was really needing to get some big quality resume boosting wins for the out of conference, especially with how the Big East had performed so far out of conference. And to be so close on that Iowa State game, what a great back and forth. But to have a lead with 2 minutes to go and squander it away and not being able to score the rest of the game, then to beat Baylor the way we did, and then get a great matchup with Auburn for another quality top 25 game and have a 11-point second half lead and blow it the way we did, just getting absolutely abused by Auburn's point guard. That was a real crying shame, continuing to show problems with giving up offensive rebounds. It's just a lot of holes for this team that we thought was a national championship contending team, top 5 in the nation preseason. And to see this many glaring weaknesses is a little bit of concern. Thankfully, plenty of season left to go. You got the greatest coach of all time to right the ship, but pessimistic Cole might rear his ugly head in some of this podcast today. So,
well, we can't fault you there, and you're definitely not alone, Cole. A lot of his fan base is hanging on by a thread, I think, right now with that the tough stretch we just saw. And, if you go 2-1, you're feeling a lot different about this. Who knows? That Iowa State game, maybe you beat Iowa State and you get 2 bad draws after there and you still go 1-2. So it's really hard to read it however it would have went. You can't look back at it now. But I want to hear your thoughts. When you walked out of that Iowa State game with that 1-point loss, how did the vibe feel in the arena?
Not good. No, not good. Like I said, when you had that lead with 2 minutes to go, and then you can't score down the rest of the stretch and you end up losing the game. I think if it was just a hotly contested matchup and you were able to, somehow barely make a clawback attempt and finish just short in a 1-point lead, a 1-point loss, that would have been one thing. But to have a late lead and then just piss it away, the vibes weren't good right from the get-go. I mean, Iowa State is a great team. TJ Alsoberger has a great roster there. But the vibes weren't good right off the first game.
Yeah, and that's been a similar story to all 3 of our losses so far. We've had leads late, late-ish in the second half, definitely real late in the Iowa State game, but I want to say at least less than 10 minutes we've had leads in all those games and haven't been able to hold on. I think that's both an alarming red flag and reason for some optimism. Those are 3 really good teams, and you're right there. Obviously, the end-of-game stuff is alarming and it's concerning. And, the Iowa State game in particular, I think, was kind of a harbinger for what we would see moving forward and what we had seen in Alabama. We couldn't rebound late, and Zuby was the victim all too often in that game. And, Zuby's our guy. So I feel like we can get on Zuby, and I'm sure Rick's getting on Zuby, and, he'll accept that and he'll work at it. But it was him in that Iowa State game who was giving up 2 or 3 offensive rebounds late on big key possessions. He also had a big turnover when we had a chance to kind of get a stranglehold there. Would have been a 4-point lead, I think. He had Bryce wide open on the baseline and bobbled the pass. Not to get on Zuby, like I said, he's our All-American. He's everything for us. But that Iowa State game, if we had just secured the ball, rebounded like we should have, I think we did enough in the other areas to win. And against a really good team, a team is going to be up towards the top of the Big 12 and competing for a high seed in the tournament.
I'm sure we'll get to some of the complaints that we have from these Vegas games. I think point guard is something that's being heavily talked about, heavily scrutinized right now, or lack thereof a point guard on this roster. To me, the biggest problem that reared its head was the inability to secure defensive rebounds. You can't give high major opponents like this that many second chance opportunities, second, third, fourth chance opportunities. You're not going to win games like that.
Well, since you brought it up, Cole, I'm not gonna keep this graphic hidden for any longer. I'm in complete agreement. The rebounding has got to get better. It was what we talked about with Jaden on his podcast before he went out to Vegas. One of my bigger concerns overall was our defensive rebounding. against high major opponents this year. We're giving up on average 41 rebounds a game, which means we're getting out rebounded by 5. And more importantly, we're giving up 17 and a quarter offensive rebounds a game. Overall in the season, we're giving up over 14, which is near dead last in the country. So this 17.25 is worse than that. And it's 37.5 of misses. So if St. John's were to stop a team and force them to shoot 45% from the field, that means the 55% of the time they're missing, they still got a 37.5 chance to corral that board and go up again. So you're leaving St. John's, a team that so far has struggled at the end of the games, a slim margin of error in terms of getting stops on the other end. So in my mind, like you said, Cole, defensive rebounding is the biggest concern right now. And on the positive side, I don't think that our roster can't be a good rebounding team. So I think there's hope there.
Yeah, I was talking to our friend Frank in general, and shout out to everybody that came up and said hello out there in Vegas. It was awesome seeing Frank, awesome seeing Dave and his lovely wife, who of course is our biggest fan of our podcast.
Okay.
But I was talking to our buddy Frank, and he pointed out exactly what you just said. I mean, with the roster that we have, with Rick Pitino liking to put out this triple towers lineup out on the court, defensive rebounding should be one of your fortes with that many big guys out there on the court at one time. And just the inability to corral balls off the glass. I mean, I think and Rick Pitino has called it out previously, but our guards have to do a better job of rebounding. And you've seen them in certain games take that criticism and get after the glass a little bit better, but I think they really still need to do a better job rebounding. I think a lot of the issues that we're having on the defensive glass is back to similarly how it was last year, where our bigs are switching absolutely everything. And kudos to them for being able to guard 1 through 5, Zuby being able to switch anything, but that leads them often out on the perimeter defending threes, and then they're out of position to defensive rebound. So when you have Ian Jackson and Josan Sanin as the two guys there in the paint trying to keep Iowa State's bigs off the glass, it's not really an area for success. And, then you are going to get beat for some offensive boards. So I don't know what the answer is. I think Rick Pitino and staff know better than I do, but got to do a better job keeping these teams from getting offensive rebounds. Cause you just, like I said at the start, you're just not going to win games giving teams that many second chance opportunities.
Couldn't agree more. You hit the nail on the head. It is part our strategy, and it's part our lack of personnel. When you got guys like RJ and Kadari, who are just physical dudes with noses for the basketball and willing to battle inside, it covered up for a lot of that stuff that we're not seeing this year with the players you mentioned. Although I will say, not Iowa State, but it was the Baylor game. I thought Josan was fighting, was really trying to get on the defensive glass. You can tell that's an area that Rick is stressing. Step one is that battle, and then step two is starting to gather some of those boards. So I think he's on a positive track there. I think physically he's the one who's most equipped to do it, but it's not just that. We'll see.
That was probably because he got lit up for having 0 rebounds against Iowa State. So,
and rightfully so. But we'll see him against AJ Storr in about a week, right? And if you guys remember me and AJ Storr, these were the same conversations I had about AJ Storr. He was a big physical wing who just never wanted to get on the glass. And if we come into the Garden on next Saturday and we see AJ Storr beating up our wings on boards, it's going to be a really tough pill to swallow. And let alone if he's draining threes. But the Iowa State game, we'll start there. Obviously, first game of the tournament, and that was the third guess. Okay, the first game of the tournament, the highest ranked of the opponents we saw. And I think St. John's played their best game, or at least I felt the best about the team we saw in this game against Iowa State. We did beat Baylor by double digits. I thought that was some part of Baylor having a really cold night and us really hot night shooting. And obviously, you compare, if you have both those things going, the score is not going to be completely indicative of how the teams played. But this Iowa State game was right there for us to take, and we didn't take it, and that's why it hurt so much. But I thought we saw some good things. Sellers obviously got really going this tournament. The correlation with him and Darling, we'll leave it up in the air. I mean, I think it's just a different shot diet and a different mentality he's got when he's not asked to be the point guard to start the game. And
It's
you
two
know that
completely
could
different. It's two completely different players. When he's I shouldn't say asked, when he's forced to handle primary ball handling responsibilities, he is just rightfully so. It's not against him, but he is just not able to hunt for his shot the way that he can when Dylan Darling's in there playing point guard.
I agree. I'm on that side of the coin, and I'm a big Sellers guy. I think he obviously had a real cold night against Auburn. Didn't have it there. We'll talk about Auburn when we get to Auburn, but overall, I think he's been one of the best things we've had this season in terms of what we've seen and where we can get him to go. And the better the rest of the pieces come along, like you said, if we can get him steadily playing mostly off the ball, I think we got a really solid piece. Ruben Prey. I can't really call Iowa State, but on the topic of rebounding, I'm just going to jump right to the Auburn game. We got killed on the boards versus Auburn, considering they weren't missing any shots. So that 35 to 32 rebound disadvantage is not as good as you would think from just 3 differential. They only missed 20 shots this whole game, Auburn. So there wasn't as many rebounding opportunities for them on the offensive end, yet they still managed to grab 12 of them. 12 offensive rebounds on 24 misses. So Auburn rebounded half of their misses against St. John's. That was with their starting center with 3 fouls in the first half, forced to come out of the game for bits and pieces there. Another thing St. John's did not take advantage of. But Ruben Prey, to my point on Ruben Prey, 5 minutes in this game versus Auburn, if I can find the right box score. Right here. 5 minutes, 3 points, 1 rebound. So in those 5 minutes, was he killing the boards? No. But I think especially in that game where we saw tired legs, Bryce Hopkins 2 for 11, Dylan Mitchell 2 for 7, weren't doing their jobs on the boards. I think that was a day to see extended minutes with Ruben Prey. Thoughts out there this week seeing him in person?
Yeah, I think especially in the Auburn game, Bryce Hopkins was absolutely tremendous in the first 2 games, really carried the weight from scoring and did a lot of great things, getting rebounds on the defensive side, especially. But you could tell that he was absolutely gassed playing that 3rd game in 3 days. I would have loved to see Ruben get a little bit more minutes there, a little bit less for Bryce, maybe a little bit less for Dylan Mitchell as well. Obviously, Dylan Mitchell, uber athlete, he had a little bit more in the tank than Bryce, but Bryce was, and deservedly so, not critiquing him in any way after he had played so hard the first 2 games. Would have loved to see more minutes from Ruben. And to your point about giving up so many rebounds, I would love to see the stat. We'd have to do some advanced digging, but I'd love to know how many of those offensive rebounds they got specifically in the second half, because I think Auburn shot 64% in the second half. So you were talking about how many of the corralling 50% of their misses just on the game. It's like, I think there were way more offensive rebounds in the second half. So if you're shooting 64%, I would love actually how many missed shots were even missed in the second half, and then how many of them did they get offensive rebounds on. It was obviously it was a tale of 2 halves. You're up 9 at half, as much as 11 early in the second half, and then they just absolutely that big guy had 3 fouls for Auburn. Once they held him out, they didn't start him at the beginning of the second half, but once he was brought in with about maybe 16, 15, 14 minutes left, it was all Auburn the rest of the way. And just another blown opportunity, a potential for a really good win.
While we're here on Auburn, do we want to have a Dylan Darling conversation, an update on your thoughts?
There's nothing I want to do more. There's nothing I want to do more than have a Dylan Darling conversation.
Floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the offensive rebounding that we talked to is my number 1 concern. My number 2 concern is point guard position. Mentioned it coming into the year. I know Pat is a huge Dylan Darling guy. I am also a Dylan Darling fan, maybe a less of a massive fanboy as Pat is, but I had my concerns about him stepping up from competition level to Big East and these high major teams that were playing out of conference. Obviously, we didn't get to see him against Alabama. This was his real first true test, these 3 games against high-level competition. I thought he looked really good in the first game against Iowa State. I think there are clear concerns about his ability to defend on ball. I think we saw a lot of that here in this game against, the guy's name escapes me, Pettiford.
Pettiford, yep.
Pettiford. And that guy's a really, really, really good point guard. I don't know how much you can throw stones at Dylan Darling for not being able to keep his man in front of him, but obviously Dylan was hampered with some type of hamstring. I saw a lot of conversation on Twitter. Frank had a really good back and forth with somebody talking about how much the offense sort of stagnates when Dylan Darling comes off the court. And obviously we talked about Isaiah Sellers and sort of how he's not able to sort of get in position for his catch and shoot shots and really hunt his 3-pointers when he's not on the court with Dylan Darling, which I totally agree. I am 100% in agreement with everything Frank says regarding what happens to the offense when Dylan's off the court, regarding how much positive effect he has on Isaiah Sellers' game. I also would say that I give Dylan Darling all those compliments while saying I think Dylan Darling on this roster would be a perfect backup point guard, especially for a team that was ranked preseason number 5, especially for a team that has national championship aspirations. I don't think Dylan Darling is a 32, 33-minute point guard for a team with that high of aspirations. While I say that and simultaneously agree with what Frank and what you are saying, that offense stagnates without him, I think that's an indictment from my perspective of me saying, like, I still have these questions about Dylan Darling. That's an indictment on the rest of the guards, that we don't have a point guard on this entire roster, and Dylan Darling is still our best point guard, is the person who has such a positive effect on our offense that it stagnates when he's out. I don't think he's a high major point guard that should be getting insane minutes at the point guard position for a national championship team, but I don't think we have another option. There's no point guard on this roster. Now, you hope a guy like Ian Jackson, who obviously has all the skills, that Rick Pitino can unlock this as the season goes. Maybe he can ultimately develop point guard skills to be a real true lead guard. We obviously don't have that at this point. So Dylan Darling is being forced into a position that maybe isn't truly best suited for his skills, but out of necessity, because we have nobody else, he has to be our main point guard. I think I totally agree. Like I said, he 100% is our point guard, is the person who stirs the ship, and has to be out there for a large amount of time running the show. But I just really have questions and concerns about his ability, especially defensively against elite point guards, especially super speedy guys. You hope maybe some of the issues he had with Pettiford were just because of the hamstring that apparently he had tweaked, but they went right at him in the second half. I know Rick Pitino held him on the bench for as long as he could in the second half, but I think Pettiford scored 10 straight at one point for Auburn.
Definitely not on him. Definitely not on him.
Well, I mean, we're switching everything anyway, but
I'll say this. I think what you said is 100% right. You hit a lot of good points there. I think the majority of the fan base is thinking right in line with you. They are not taking their axe out on Dylan Darling. They're taking their frustrations out on the fact that they're asking a lot of Dylan Darling. Mm-hmm. I'm not as convinced that he can't be the guy that can make this team be a national championship contender. With me saying that doesn't mean I'm not convinced that he can be the level of point guard that a Pettiford is or a Lindsey. That's not what I'm saying. I think with the pieces we have, that he can stir the drink enough, can steady the ship enough to make our offense and our team capable to compete for a national champion. I don't know about the injury against Auburn. I'm not really buying that. I think he didn't have a good game, and Rick didn't trust him early. Didn't go back to him, but here's what I'll say, and this isn't giving him a pass. This is just saying it's everybody. Pettiford and Auburn were going by all our guards. We saw Darling play 7 minutes against Auburn, and trust me, there was 40 minutes of them getting in the paint. So it's not just him. It's all our defensive players, which makes me think a different approach is something Rick's really got to think about. And this isn't, me giving a Hall of Fame pointers. I'm sure they're discussing all these options. But I think if you're going to play Dylan Mitchell as a facilitator for extended minutes, which means you're going to be playing him next to Hopkins and Zuby defensively, and you're having these rebounding struggles, I think there's pieces on this roster that could really play his own well. And then you could have the opportunity of hiding Dylan Darling up top a little bit more, where he's never going to be that bottom guy and help. It's just something I've thought about. And, people bring up Dylan Mitchell as a point forward, and he is a facilitator in the half court. I would consider giving it a real designation for 10 minutes a game. You know, like you are the point guard for this roster. You're not just assisting with the facilitating. Right now with this lineup, you're the point guard. And see how that works and see if you can get 20 to 25 from Darling, 10 from Mitchell, and then maybe patchwork the 5 to 10 rest with Sellers if you have to, or, you know, it's really those are the only three options. We're not even going to go down the Jackson or the Sand and Rabbit hole right now in terms of being the primary ball handler. But I think your concerns are fair. I think everybody's concerns are fair. I think Rick obviously has these concerns, and he would prefer to have someone else step up. I don't think your starting point guard for this roster needs to be a guy who's going to be scoring a ton of points. I don't think he's this bad of a shooter. So I think there's a balance there that will even out. For instance, I'll sit and watch that Baylor game with anybody who wants to sit and watch that game with me. He had 0 assists in that game, 2 points. He impacted that game fully through the whole way through. And there were shots that were missed that were great passes from him. There were free throws led to passes from him that are really assists. So a box score counter in terms of Dylan Darling's impact is really not what I'm worried about. I think him getting comfortable defensively and us finding maybe an approach that works not only for him, but for this team to rebound and stay on the floor could do wonders.
And his effect on Isaiah Sellers is 100% there and visible and true. We cannot have Isaiah forced into ball handling responsibilities and that taken away from his offensive game, because his offensive game is so important to this roster. I mean, him absolutely filling it up in that Iowa State game was super impressive to see. It's literally a layup for him, an open 3-pointer when he's feeling it and hot, and it's so fun to see up close in person. If it's going to affect his game that much and take away so much from his shot making ability to have to handle the ball, then we need someone else to take over those responsibilities from Isaiah. Right now, the only other person that can do it on this roster is Dylan Darling. And you hope that changes as the season goes on. It's not going to be through getting some mid-season transfer, that much I can guarantee. But I just view it as, you devoted. I don't know. Maybe you can get somebody from the G League or something like that. I don't know what the hell's going on in college basketball these days, but it's just, it's a crying shame to have a roster this talented. You've devoted so much of Mike Rapoli's money to put together a real, obviously preseason national championship contending roster, and you just didn't get a real true bona fide point guard to go with that roster. It seems a little malpractice-y to me, but what do I know?
I think it's fair. I think it's very fair. The Baylor win, 96-81, the lone win on the weekend. St. John's really shot the ball well. You can see Hopkins 9 for 12, Sellers 6 for 11, Dylan Mitchell 8 for 10. The three of those guys really – and Ian Jackson, 5 for 7. So the four of those guys, lights out. I want to hear your thoughts up close in person on Ian Jackson.
Well, I'm so glad you went there, because that's exactly what I was going to interject with. I thought this was Ian Jackson's best game. Obviously, his stats were a little bit better against Bucknell, but I was most impressed with how he played against Baylor. Shot the ball, obviously, tremendously efficiently. Really was giving great effort defensively. Only 3 boards, but he was being aggressive on the defensive glass, which I love to see. I 100% agree with you too on your points on Dylan Darling. I thought he, despite maybe not filling up the box score, had his fingerprints all over this Baylor game. Again, you see the performances that I called out for Dylan Darling in the Iowa State and the Baylor game, and look at Isaiah Sellers' numbers in both of those games. It's a direct correlation between Dylan Darling playing well and Isaiah Sellers being able to shoot well on the court. Isaiah Sellers was so impressive in the Baylor game. Like I mentioned, open threes just seemed like layups for him when he's hot and he's going and he's confident. It's a shame that you looked that good against Baylor and then turned around and had a performance like that against Auburn. But
yeah, and you really saw the two forwards, Hopkins and Mitchell, play make and score in that game. You know, how many games will they both have close to 20 points? And in this case, Hopkins close to 30, 5+ rebounds, 5+ assists. That's just rare for a combination of forwards to impact the game so much in the college level. But both those guys are that type of talent. I thought Jackson played well this weekend overall. A couple errant turnovers, I think, really hurt him late in the Auburn game, where I thought he was starting to get going. He had a really nice and one finish. You could see the confidence in his face at that point, and that was followed by a travel on the sideline right in front of Rick, maybe right in front of Cole and brother Sean. And I don't think he got back in the game. I don't remember him playing the last 5 minutes versus Auburn. But I thought this weekend overall was a positive step in the direction for Jackson. I do. And if you look at our team's shooting stats on the year, I mean, I know we're 4-3 with 3 losses against the best teams we played, but Jackson is shooting over 40% from 3. Here, let me see if I can pull up everything exact. Jackson is shooting 53% from 3. Sellers is shooting 44% from 3. I'm sorry, Sellers is 48% from 3. Jackson's 39% from 3, excuse me. Sandin, 44% from 3. So, those 3 guys we were worried about a game or two in the season in terms of our wings being shooters, they're all shooting at a better than good clip from 3. I think it's more so getting inconsistent looks, all of them having contributions in the same game and not just it being like substitutes for each other. Can they all play well in the same game? When they do, I think we'll be able to beat pretty much anybody.
Dylan Darling probably shooting like 8% from 3 so far this
season. You want that one?
Dragging down the team numbers.
He is a 70.77%. So yeah, just a shade under 8. Cole. Shade under 8.
Nailed it.
Ruben scorching 50% from 3. And Zuby 43% from 3. So it's not our 3-point shooting capabilities that's going to hold this team back, I don't think.
Well, I know we're sort of hopping around to all the different games, and I apologize, our ADD brains for our listeners, but you bring up Zuby's 3-pointer. What did you think about that last look against Iowa State?
Here's my problem with that Iowa State ending, and me not wanting to get on coaches here. I think you didn't have the right lineup out there. You're down 3, you need 3. So I get all the points about not calling a timeout so they don't set up their defense. You discussed before what your play is going to be. You want the freedom of movement type deal. I get all those points. But when you're down 3 and you got Dylan Mitchell as part of your 5, you've already got Zuby out there, who I just said he's shooting 40% from 3. But is he really a guy who can create a 3? It's got to be a wide open catch and shoot, really. So you got 2 guys who can't really catch and shoot from 3, and you need 3. I think you call timeout to get your best shooters out there, no? He did not want to hear Matt Norlander ask that question. He snapped at him pretty quick. My thoughts on Zuby's 3, I didn't love it. No, I didn't love the shot.
Coach Pat, this is why you have your own podcast, buddy. Like breaking it down. I was furious.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of Dylan Mitchell, he was the second last guy on that court that I wanted shooting a 3-pointer. So. But it was kind of like a broken play. Like I don't know what I don't think that was drawn up for a Zuby 3-point look, but had to put it up. But a contested fading 3-pointer from Zuby wasn't exactly what I was hoping for.
In the prior 2 misses, I'm not sure if they're different possessions wholly or we got an offensive rebound, but I know Sellers missed a mid-range jumper and you missed I thought a good drive at the rim. I could do without the mid-range shot. The drive at the rim I liked.
I guess my problem with the drive to the rim was it really seemed like the refs had started to swallow their whistles down towards the end of that game. They had called a lot of fouls prior to that. So I didn't think Sellers was going to get bailed out with a foul call there. But, I liked him. I liked him being aggressive. I wasn't surprised at the no call, but I liked him being aggressive. But
right. Well, like in a 1-point game, right? That's a shot if he makes, and then the foreign dude on Iowa State that killed us all night. I'm sure you hated him. Yeah, he had a drive right before that to give him the lead, which was a tough finish in traffic, one-handed dude from a 6'9" shooter. So if Sellers goes in and he misses that, St. John's wins by 1. That's basketball to me. So Iowa State gets the win, St. John's could have got that win, and the teams are feeling so much different about each other. So I don't go as high and low as a lot of the fan base does coming off a couple tough losses. Obviously, it'd be great to be celebrating one of these, and we've built up quite the reputation as a fan base of people love shoving it down St. John's fans' throat. I don't know what it is, and we make it easy for them. So it's definitely frustrating, and I feel for anybody like Cole and brother Sean and Dave and Frank and all the loyal guys who went out there for the weekend and saw St. John's kind of lay an egg in terms of what the expectations were.
So if we look ahead now, and pessimistic Cole can now come on out, we have 2 remaining huge out-of-conference games. Obviously, the next game on the 6th of December against Ole Miss at MSG, and then Catlanta versus Kentucky. Where do you fall, considering how poorly the Big East, the rest of the Big East, and us included, have performed out of conference? Where do you land with those 2 big remaining out of conference games for St. John's? What do you need to see there? 1 and 2, 2 and 2, and then what would be your projection for St. John's within the Big East? Obviously, it's early. Obviously, we'll break this down a little bit closer as we get closer to the Big East conference schedule. But for me, again, you're trying to develop a real resume for March Madness. I would originally say I wanted a 1 to 3 seed. Maybe I'm going down a few seed lines now. But in my opinion, obviously, I think the Ole Miss game is an absolute must win. I still think St. John's in the Big East. UConn looks like an absolute wagon of a team. Maybe you assume those are 2 losses. The Big East is always tough. Are you going to drop a couple that you don't expect, whether it's to Nova, whether it's to Georgetown, whether it's to a Butler or someone? Maybe you pencil in 16-4, 15-5 at the absolute worst. What does that look like for a resume for March Madness? I think there is a realistic world where we don't figure out this point guard situation. God forbid Dylan Darling ever gets hurt. And it's like this, based on what's remaining in this schedule and our chances at resume wins. I mean, there's a world where St. John's finishes 13-7 in conference and misses the March Madness tournament. I don't think that's going to happen. Even the pessimist in me doesn't imagine myself to think of a world like that. But I mean, it's on the table at this point when you don't have a resume win at this point.
So we've got 5 more out of conference games. Ole Miss, Iona, Kentucky, Harvard. Oh, make it 4. 4. Ole Miss, Iona, Kentucky, and Harvard. If we were to lose those 2 games, if you're asking me, I think it's a must-win too. We got to go out to do what we did to Baylor versus Ole Miss. But if we were to lose both those games, and you beat Iona and Harvard, that would put us at 6-5 for the non-conference season. And if you were to go 13-7, you got 12 losses, 18 wins. You're not making the tournament there. I don't think we're either of those teams. I don't think we're 0-2 versus Ole Miss and Kentucky, and I don't think we're 13-7 in this Big East. But you're just speaking of scenarios here. And 4 years ago, you would never think a 13-7 Big East team would have no chance of making it. I don't think you'd have a chance with that, unless something happened where you swept UConn or something. But I think you gotta Ole Miss, treat it like a must-win, and I think we will come out fired up. But that's a team. You're playing against a high major team with a really damn good coach and good talent. So you could play good and lose. So that's the struggle of the situation you put yourself in. You have 0 wiggle room now. I do think Kentucky is another team who's struggling. I'm sure our fan base sees Kentucky and sees top 20 ranking, but their point guard's out for extended time. He might be out for the season. They haven't gone off to the hottest start, so they're probably feeling just as questionable about their team as St. John's fans are feeling about them. So treat that like old man teaching young man a lesson. That's Coach Pitino teaching the young gun, Mark Pope, a few things. Go 2-0, and obviously take care of business against Iona and Harvard. I know you didn't mention them, Cole, but 4-0, you get to 10-3. That would be right. 8-3 in out of conference. I've been thinking 16-4 has been the number just in my head for a while now, and that was before the Vegas trip. I figure split with UConn. I thought prior split with Creighton. Now I'm leaning towards sweeping Creighton, but I think you're just going to run up against a Georgetown or Villanova on the road that's going to catch you. And then are you going to be perfect at home? Hard to believe too. So 14 or 16-4 was kind of my thoughts there. And if you go 2-0 against these two major conference teams and 16-4, I think you could really still be in line for a 4 seed, 3, 4, 5, in that range, which all you got to do is beat one game and then you're flipping with that 3 seed,
Win a couple games in the Big East tournament. Yeah. I know the vibes are not great right now with the fandom, but I implore everybody heading to MSG in a little over a week from now to recognize what an important matchup that is and how important it is to the rest of our season. Hopefully everybody's loud and fired up. I'm sure we will be. That's how St. John's fandom operates. We have like a huge letdown and we sit down and we sulk, and then 4 days from now, I'll be bought right back in. I'll be dying for another game. I'll be as hyped as anybody when St. John's Ole Miss tips, but absolute must win at this point. So hopefully everybody's fired up. Hopefully everybody's liquored up for that game and ready to give it to Chris Beard and AJ Storr.
8 p.m. game Saturday night. I'm wondering why I wasn't thinking about going down there. Maybe I gotta check out the train schedule and get down to MSG for a late night Saturday tip. Haven't gone to a late night MSG game before.
There's plenty of bars around there, dude. Get a few drinks in beforehand.
All right, so we talked through our struggles. Obviously, not the best trip for Cole and brother Sean, but we're pleased that they went out there to cheer us on. Big game next Saturday. St. John's looks to right the ship. Cole, any final thoughts before we sign off here tonight?
Go Johnnies, man.
Go Johnnies. Stay strong. We'll fight to see another day. Don't give up hope. Don't sell your NCAA tournament tickets or give up your vacation you had booked. All right, there's still plenty of season left, and a really good coach who St. John's has to kind of figure things out. So stay positive. We'll get there. If not, come blame me. From Malik Booth, this has been Pat Kane. That's Cole Adshaw, Red Storm Rap Reaction Podcast. Peace.